and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Skincare. This is the 9th episode. Tonight we're going to be talking about another common sign of aging, and that is pigmentation. As always, I remind you, if you haven't had a chance to pop over to tkaesthetics.com to do your skin inventory, then please do. It's a simple step-by-step assessment that will enable you to identify areas of concern in your skin that you can then choose products or talk to your skincare specialist about once we're out of lockdown. So tonight, as I said, we're going to be talking a little bit about pigmentation, but we have a quick question for you again this week. So if you're watching live, then you can pop the answer to this question in the post and we'll answer it, or in the comments, and we'll answer it a little bit later on. What is the most common factor that contributes to increased pigmentation? So what is the most common factor that contributes to increased pigmentation? So a quick look at some of the signs of aging that we discussed last week. So wrinkles, pigmentation, volume loss, dullness, bruising, sagging skin, drying and thinning of skin are all signs of skin aging as we get a little bit older. And what we're going to be talking, we have been for the last couple of weeks, and then next week we're going to do a little bit of a roundup on all the different bits and pieces that are in that list and the treatments and products that we might be able to use. But as I said, this week we're going to be talking about pigmentation. So first of all, and probably one of the most important things that I want to say is that if you have a lesion that you are in any way concerned about, please do get it checked out by a medical professional. And if you want to know the ABCD of how to do that, then you can see it shown here, and you can also have a look at the British Association of Dermatologists under their Sun Awareness Week. They have some fantastic guidelines there. And certainly have a quick look, and any lesions that look odd or that you're a little bit concerned about, then do get them checked out by a medical professional. So what is pigmentation, or pigment then? So with pigmentation, we get two problems. We either get too little pigmentation or too much pigmentation. I'm not going to be focusing today on too little pigmentation, as that can relate to lots of different disorders in the body, and so it would be better to get that checked out by a medical professional. What we are going to be talking today, though, is we are going to be talking about hyperpigmentation. So, in other words, an increased amount of pigmentation in the skin. So the pigment that we find in our skin is called melanin. There are two different types of melanin, so there's a little bit of science bit going on here. So you've got eumelanin and pheomelanin, and pheomelanin is the sort of yellow to reddish sort of colour, and then eumelanin is the dark brown to black sort of a colour. You may well have seen this chart before. It's the skin tones chart or skin colour chart, and essentially as we go from fairer to darker, we increase our risk of sunburn and increase our risk of sun damage. Interestingly, in darker skin tones, though, you get an increased risk of something called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So, as I mentioned, hyperpigmentation is an increase in the melanin production in the skin. And there are lots of different things that cause that, and we'll come on and talk about those now in a couple of seconds. But a little bit more science now. So melanin is produced by what we call melanocytes, and they sit deep down in the upper layer of the skin. And what happens is that in response to various different triggers, they produce more melanin, and then that makes its way up to the surface and gives our skin the colour that we commonly perceive. What happens is when it becomes damaged is that it produces more melanin, and therefore we get increased pigmentation. And as I said, there are various different factors that can cause that. Okay, so once again, quick question. Anybody got the answer to that question in terms of what is the single most important factor when it comes to hyperpigmentation? Anybody got that in there? I'll give you a couple of seconds. So there are different types of hyperpigmentation disorders that we can talk about. Nobody's quite answered the question, but let's talk about it. So the most important thing is sun exposure. So our skin's response to sun exposure is to produce more melanin, and that is a protective factor to try and block out the harmful rays from getting down to the deeper layers of the skin and causing problems. So sun exposure is probably one of the most important things. Other things are things like hormonal influences. So for women, you can get a pregnancy mask, so a butterfly mask that you get across the face, and commonly known as melasma, during pregnancy, but can also be brought on by things like the oral contraceptive pill. So hormones play a significant role in pigmentation. Age, as we get a little bit older, our epidermis thins a little bit, and so pigmentation becomes a little bit more prominent. Also, depending on their exposure to sun during our lifetime, then that can cause increased expression of melanin. Skin injuries, so where you've damaged skin, you can often get a hyperpigmentation occurring. So when the skin heals, then the pigmentation is increased in that particular area. Where there's been inflammation, one of the most common places that you find this is where there's been acne. So you've got some acne scarring, and what you end up with is a little bit of extra pigmentation around that area. You can also get it in other post-inflammatory problems. So any sort of skin condition or boil or anything like that that can cause inflammation in the skin can cause hyperpigmentation as the skin heals. Some medications can cause it, along with some perfumes and essential oils. So if you have been spraying your perfume on your neck area, and you notice that this is the area that in particular becomes pigmented, then that is most likely a reaction to something in the perfume. So some of the essential oils or the extracts that have been used can cause reactions and cause hyperpigmentation. And there are certain illnesses that cause it as well. If you find pigmentation happening in areas though that you wouldn't normally expect it, so under the arms or places in the crease of the elbow and things like that, then you should also get that checked out by your healthcare professional. Okay. I said before, and you're probably getting a little bit of a theme here, one of the most important things when you are talking about pigmentation and aging is protection from the sun, so wearing an SPF. And what else can we do though? Okay, so to effectively treat hyperpigmentation, there are two different strategies that we need to undertake. One is a corrective strategy, and the other is a regulation or regulatory strategy. So by corrective strategy, I mean something that is going to help to reduce the amount of melanin that is actually in the upper layers of skin and therefore producing the color. So things that can help with this will be things like peels, exfoliation, microdermabrasion, and for single spots, then lasers can be of help as well. You can also use topical preparations, and certainly if you're undergoing a course of that addressing the treatment, then I would recommend that you use a brightening cream as well. Now, brightening creams have various different ingredients, and you would need to check those to see what those ingredients are. But certainly things like licorice extract, some vitamin C is quite good, kojic acid. So they can all be found in preparations that are designed to lighten the skin. Quite clearly, and I don't know that I need to state this, so there's no point in using a brightening cream if you're not using a very strong SPF to help protect it, because otherwise you're just doing one thing against the other. Okay, so regulatory then. So corrective is one side of it, and regulatory, as I said, is the other. So you can correct it, so you can improve the appearance of pigmentation. On the other side, though, you do need to be using treatments that are going to help you to regulate that production of melanin. And in particular, there's tyrosinase, which is a key element of the production of melanin, and you want to be using inhibitors to help prevent the melanin from forming again. So things that are tyrosinase inhibitors are things like hydroxyquinone, kojic acid again. Vitamin C is a good all-rounder, and it helps to prevent oxidative damage as well. Arbutin and tranexamic acid are all important ingredients when it comes to the regulatory part of the treatment process. So let's have a little look then. So in terms of, I always talk about the Juliet Armand group. I will again say that I'm only talking about these simply because they are ones that I know and that I have in the range here. So these are the Glow range. So the Glow Vitamin C, which is a high strength vitamin C, the brightening cream and the brightening serum. And they are all designed to help lighten the skin. They've got vitamin C, kojic acid, and a couple of other ingredients in there that help to lighten and brighten the skin. However, as I said, I would recommend that if you've got some problems with pigmentation, that you really need to take a dual approach, that you need to be looking at both a corrective as well as a regulatory aspect, and so that you will need to speak to somebody about how to go about that. I'm also really excited because once we're out of lockdown, I'll also be able to offer this treatment called Derma Milan, which is a specific treatment in clinic as well as a home care package that help to reduce and significantly improve the appearance of pigmentation. And so we'll be able to do that once we're out of lockdown. So as I said, it's several weeks of a program. The one thing about using a treatment for hyperpigmentation, though, is that it does take quite some time for it to work. So we're not talking about a quick fix here. We are talking about a strategy that will take a few months to actually see improvements. The key, as I said, is about the home care and about making sure that you are helping to prevent that pigmentation from coming again. So in terms of what way we should approach this, certainly the first step is to get a good consultation, a good assessment of what's going on with your skin and what are the most appropriate treatments for you. You can combine them with other treatments like microneedling, etc., and they can give increased efficacy to the treatment that you're undertaking. So there are multiple ways of doing it. An appropriate consultation, as I said, is really, really important. And then combining the strategies and making sure that you're addressing both a corrective as well as a regulatory aspect. So you can certainly do the corrective on its own, but what you'll find is that it won't last as long as it would do as if you were taking on the regulatory process as well. So that's it for me on hyperpigmentation. If you have any questions, then please, while I'm doing the recap here, then please stick them into the comments and I'll be happy to answer them for you now. A very big shout out to Lisa. Thanks for joining us, Lisa, who's said hello in the comments. And to Nicola, who's also said hello in the comments. So once again, pigmentation, main factor is sun exposure, but other factors can be things like hormones, medications, and perfumes. So if you particularly you've got pigmentation in specific areas, then do try and think where that may have happened. Strategies for treatment are twofold: regulatory as well as corrective. So you need to be talking about both of those. And if you do have problems with pigmentation, it is best to get a consultation and the best advice on the products to use. Okay, a quick roundup of what's happening on the internet over these few weeks of lockdown. So my friends are all doing various different bits and pieces, so just to give them a quick shout out. So on a Friday night, you have Spice, and you can check Spice out at Spice Drag on Facebook. She does a quiz on a Friday night, and that's usually quite a bit of fun. Ruffles, you can find out details at The Only Ruffles on Facebook. There's a quiz on a Tuesday. That has changed to a Tuesday afternoon now rather than a Tuesday evening. Wonderful Kevin Coyle is still doing Food You Believe It on Thursdays with kids in the morning and adults in the evening. He's not doing one tomorrow because he's busy preparing for a brand new special series on recipes on how to lose weight after our lockdown. So some recipes that will help you to encourage you to lose some of those pounds that we've put on during lockdown. And then the Bedford Tavern from Brighton on a Sunday night does piano bingo. So Nicola has asked me if I can help her to undo the damage going back to 2001. Well, Nicola, I don't know that if I can help you undo the damage, but we can certainly help you to correct some of the effects of that damage as we move forward. So we'll stay in touch and you can have a chat about what we can do. And a very big hello to Sarah as well. So next week, I'm going to be addressing some of the other problems with aging. A lot of the treatments we've already discussed and a lot of the products we've already discussed will be suitable for addressing some of the other signs of aging. But we'll have a quick roundup of those next week. And if you have any questions next week, I'm hoping to get some questions in next week. I'll be able to answer them on next week's show. And we'll see you then. So thanks again for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week.